Epilogue, the final briefing. It was evening by the time we wrapped up our talks with the Teng on the final day. After an early-ish dinner, we decided to hold our first administrative meeting in a while. Since we had all my officials here for a change, I figured it'd be a good chance to brief each other on recent events. We also had a few visitors, Veldora, Ramirez, and her servants Beretta and trainee. Melim would be officially coming to town 3 days from now, and I guess she was really starting to feel the heat from Frey, so she decided to head back home in the meantime. Smart girl. I don't know how pissed off Frey was, but if Melim stayed here for much longer, I bet the answer would be very, and I didn't want to be caught in the crossfire. Plus, we had another new face. Now, before we begin this conference, there's someone I'd like to introduce to you all. This is MG Elmile, or Molly, and I am considering a government post for him. He's been intimately involved with arrangements for the Founders' Festival in 3 days, and if it turns out successful, I'd like to name him Chief of our Financial Affairs. I want all of you to treat him well. I had wanted to do this when everybody was around. Plus, I wanted Midji Elmile to handle the final pre-festival briefing for me. My name is Guard MG Elmile. Sir Rimuru has been kind enough to give me a crucial duty in the upcoming festivities, and frankly, I'm rather tense, but I hope I will earn good favor from all of you here today. As an ever so slightly overweight fellow, Midji Elmile didn't look tense at all. Still, it must have taken guts introducing himself to a room full of monsters. Even he gets nervous sometimes, I guess. Dealing with mafia types in the big city was probably a far cry from going face-to-face with high-level magic born like us. With our introductions now concluded, I jumped right into the topic at hand. All right, Molly, if you could go over how things are looking for us right now. Yes, sir. If you'll excuse me, then. Taking my cue, Midji Elmile got up from his seat next to Rigard and went over our preparations for the Founders' Festival. 2 days from now, on the night before opening ceremonies, we would be holding a citywide launch party. This would be open to everyone, including not just event invitees, but the merchants and the adventurers bodyguarding them, visiting town with free food and drink for all. The news had already gone out, of course, and I heard about farmers and the like from nearby cities traveling over for it. The exact sort of tourism I wanted to attract, so I wanted to be damn sure they had a great time. In the reception hall, meanwhile, we'd hold a palatial banquet for the visiting royalty and nobility. Everything served here would be a tandem effort between Shuna and Yoshide, the baker. They were debuting a lot of new dishes, I knew, so I couldn't wait. This would be a standing buffet-type thing, since I wanted guests to enjoy smaller bits of as many different kinds of food as we could offer. Then the Founders' Festival officially began. On the morning of the first day, I would hold a speech. Yes, yet another speech, but I needed some kind of event to officially proclaim that I was a demon lord, so this was kind of unavoidable. I suggested skipping this since everyone knew already, but my advisors all just smiled and said no. Right after that, we'd kick off the battle tournament at the Colosseum. I, however, would not be in attendance. This festival was meant to help VIPs from other nations get to know Tempest, so I couldn't just sit around watching the preliminary rounds all day. Instead, my itinerary included a seat at our newly refurbished and extremely fancy-looking theatre. Nobody's told me what kind of performance to expect, which made me a bit anxious, but Midji Elmile seemed really enthusiastic about it. I feel this will be a chance to show the world that you are a cultured demon lord, he'd said with a grin. Sean was smiling right along with him, which did nothing to calm my nerves. But no point stewing over it. If it had MG Elmile's stamp of approval, I'd have to trust in him. After lunch came a technological exhibition, including panels like Gabble and Vesta's history of healing potions, Kurobe and Garm's grand tour of their weaponry, and so on. This would take place at our museum, which, like the theatre, would be open to the general public from day 2 onward. For today, It was open to nobility only, so they could take their time with everything on display. I thought that staggering the schedules like that would be best for security purposes. Speaking of day 2, that's when I'd begin to take in the battle tournament. Later that afternoon, I'd also hold a series of chats, or, to put it another way, it was some unscheduled free time for me. Basically, I'd be in my VIP box at the arena, and if anyone wanted to talk to me, I'd take their questions one by one. Mijiel Mile was arranging all that for me, so really it'd just be a pleasant distraction as I took in the tournament. Everyone who received paper invites would have a guide provided for them, and they'd be free to enjoy the fest any way they wanted. Peruse the stalls, enjoy our luxurious hot baths, or check out the tournament themselves. Then, on day 3, we'd finally open up our long-awaited dungeon. The final matches of the tournament would take place that morning, and in the afternoon you'd get to watch as adventurers tried their hand at conquering the labyrinth. "You've completed quite an impressive coliseum while I was gone," marveled Geld, no doubt impressed that there was a whole generation of talented craftsmen below him now. "That we have. You and Mildo have a great apprentice in Gobkyu. It's a perfectly sound structure. You wouldn't even know this was a rush project. If our top magic-born fought in here, I'd be worried, but any fights between competitors ranked below A shouldn't be a problem. In terms of safety, the arena could just about withstand a high-level spirit like Ifrit raging inside it. Which, I mean, if someone focused the full brunt of their attacks on the arena itself, I couldn't do much about that. But I'd be there for the main battles, and I planned on putting a light absolute defense barrier over the stadium. Barring a catastrophe, the audience would be perfectly safe, probably. And I've discovered the ultimate in gourmet bliss with my hibachi grill. It will be can't miss delight. Trust me on that. Oh, I almost forgot. He really wanted to run a stand, so there wasn't much to do for it except let him participate in disguise. It's funny, though. Somewhere along the line, Magi Elmile and Veldora had really started to get along with each other. All the impossible demands I had given them, and it looked like he was now fully used to things. Amazing! This guy may be more of a monster than I thought. That was all for Magi Elmile's rundown. Diablo, Hakuro, and Geld, who weren't around for all the lead-up work, listened intently to it all, no doubt saddened that they couldn't be a part of it. I should probably give each of them a reward of some sort. Geld's could wait until he was done with his current job, but Diablo and Hakuro had wrapped up theirs with flying colors. Making a mental note of that, I turned to my officials. "So far, everything's been going smoothly," I said. "Have any of you run into any issues?" If nobody had, I was going to turn it over to Soe, but "Yes, sir." That was Ramirez's cheerful voice sounding out as she raised her hand. "Ramirez, huh? I'm sure it's nothing serious then." "What's up, Ramirez?" "Well, I got a problem." "Yes? What is it?" "Okay, well, you see, it's about the bottom floors of the dungeon." She fell silent, glancing at Veldora. "Yes, it is nothing serious. You recall the forest installed in floor 95 of the labyrinth? Well, for some reason, it has started growing its way up into higher floors, and it now covers everything up to floor 71, Veldora said. He sounded so casual about it, too. Floors 91 to 94 were thankfully sealed off, so they apparently weren't affected. But the rest of the levels were now lush forest, thanks to the plant life making its way up the magicule ventilation ducts. That's gonna be a pretty big pain in the ass to clean up, isn't it? It sure is. That's why I'm bringing it up with you, Ramirez cried. I hated to say it, but she had a point. Eesh. If this was anyone's fault, it was Veldora's. And, we do have one more small issue, the dragon added. What would that be? I really didn't want to ask, but I had to. but what Veldora gave me went far beyond my expectation. My boss-level monsters are missing. That was what I wished to discuss. Ah, well, at least he wasn't bringing up something stupid. Apparently, this creeping forest was sucking up the magicules in the labyrinth before those monsters could be spawned. As a result, we weren't seeing monsters worthy of being deemed bosses of the lower dungeons. We did have a single Tempest Serpent-born rank, a minus, but I already designated that the boss of floor 40. It was Veldora and Ramirez, after all, who said they didn't need small fry like that in their domain. If they wanted it back now, forget it. Also, I'm thinking about making a new elemental colossus, so I want you to get the materials for me. Yes, and I want you to employ monsters worthy of serving as my bosses, and clean up the forest for me. Ramirez, I could at least lend an ear to. I was only planning to open everything up to floor 50 for this unveiling anyway, so I figured we could manage. But I really didn't have time for Veldora's selfish demands. We'd have time to worry about that later. For now, he'd just have to take care of things himself. I was just about to turn him down when I heard 3 voices at the same time. I think we have the perfect person for the job, actually. Sir Rimuru, why don't you let them take care of this? My master, I can think of someone suitable. It was Shuna, Trini, and Ranga. Shuna suggested that Adelmon the White would work as a boss. Gabble rapidly agreed with her. Adelman's forces are weak against sunlight, she reasoned, so they would thrive in cave-like environment. I think the labyrinth would be perfect for them. Indeed, while Adelman could leave the cave in the day, none of his forces could. I heard they liked to wander outside at night, much to the consternation of passing merchants. I had a stack of complaints from them in my office. Yeah, if I ran into a walking skeleton in the dead of night, I'd probably pee my pants too. Putting them down in that maze seemed like a good idea. Besides, Shuna glumly continued, he's a little pushy, praising you as a god and everything. In Adelman's eyes, I was a god, and Shuna my shrine princess. That was pretty annoying, yes? All right. We'll stick Adelman in floor 60 as the boss. And Ramirez, I'll get some stuff to make an elemental colossus with. Have Adalman help you out. Are you sure? Yeah. He's got a lot of intelligence, if not much else. He ought to help out with your research. All right. Thanks, Rimuru. So we had bosses for floors 60 and 70. Now it was Trainee's turn, and she suggested leaving floors 71 through 80, where the vegetation was still relatively sparse. To Zigion and Epito, those 2 can summon their underlings, she said, so they should be able to reclaim those floors in quick order. Plus, she flashed a look at Ramirez. I think that Zigion would make a fine boss for floor 80, she said, smiling. He's done a wonderful job protecting the Trient homeland up to now. I see. That sounds like a splendid idea, chimed in Veldora. I would be happy to train him up to a fighter worthy of making floor 80 proud. Yeah, Zigion was definitely a lot stronger than one might guess. Definitely stronger than a Tempest Serpent, or at least he was the last time I saw him. But this is still Zegion we're talking about. He's just a bug the size of a squirrel or something, you know? I'm not sure how much you could train up something like that, but oh well. I already knew Veldora was a weirdo, so I could just let him do what he liked. Okay, let's go with that. Then, for Ranga. Master, the fox spirit I have been tending to has awoken and claims to be gifted at clearing out forests in any way requested. I would suggest accepting the offer, perhaps, he said, poking his head out from my shadow. And sitting between his ears was what looked like a fox pup with 4 golden tails swaying behind it. So cute. Wanna try it? Indeed, I do, sir. The fox nodded, eyes gleaming at me. Again, so cute. Essentially, this kit's offer was to blaze animal trails through the vegetation, creating a sort of maze with them. If that was what it wanted to do, I saw no reason to say no. If it proved not up to the task, I could just raise the forest then. Okay, so... Then I noticed a problem of my own. This fox, nicknamed Ninehead back when it was under Clayman's control, still didn't really have a name. Well, wait. Before that, let me give you a name. From this day forward, your name is Kumara. It was totally casual, like giving a dog a name. But I wasn't stupid. I had learned my lesson by now, and I wasn't going to have all my magical energy sapped away this time. No, this time I could control. Wait. Wow. I was suddenly seized by a flooding sort of lethargy. This was soon followed by panic. Report. This is the effect of the naming. Since the subject, Kumara, held a vast amount of magicule energy, more energy is being consumed than originally surmised. I was tricked by this tiny fox pup in front of me, but yeah, it's actually one of the rarest, most high-level monsters out there. I, may have dropped the ball there. Plus, the moment I uttered the name, Kumara started growing fast. Not in size, really, but in number of tails, which went from 4 to 9 in a hurry. It had only 3 during the fight with Ranga, and each of those tails had its own special ability. In a way, what I had done, I suppose, was summon not 1, but 9 different magical beasts at the same time. My deepest thanks, Sir Rimuru. I shall do all I can. Ah, well, no point dwelling on the past. I managed to avoid slipping into unconsciousness, so I guess Raphael's calculations were close enough, even if it wasn't quite as expected. Not much surprise in its voice anyway. It must have assumed it'd hand over this level of magicules to the little fox from the get-go. Otherwise, Kumara wouldn't have grown exactly 9 tails like that.
Cole, don't play dumb with me.
I can see through you well enough. Thus, I decided to leave floors 81 through 90 to the overjoyed, scampering Kumara. It's not like this zone would see a swell of adventurers from day one. I bet Kumara solo would make a fine boss. That wrapped up Ramirez's and Veldora's issues. I was glad to see the rest of my staff was pretty excited about the dungeon too. Its success was really important to me. I wanted to be sure its operation started on the right track. I gave Kumara a pat on the head. With all the reporting on the Founders' Festival done, I wanted to listen to Sui's recent finding. All right, Soe, the stage is yours. Yes, sir. What he had for me was quite a surprise. It turned out that a hero had taken down the entire Orthrus slave market organization. Its exposure and downfall had already led to severe consequences for certain nobility around the world, including that Viscount Kazakh guy who was now in the custody of the Blumund authorities. Even Englesia is alive with rumors of the affair. Orthrus had connections with virtually every nation in the world. It was an armed group who held possession of a great number of battle slaves, including magic-born and magical beasts. Their military power was equivalent to that of a small country, but it said a hero's band was all it took to destroy it. So I smiled a little. This hero, Lightspeed Masayuki, a name familiar to me, was now being lauded as the strongest man in the Western nations, a reputation no doubt buoyed by the news of my victory over Hinata. Did this mean anyone who lost to a demon lord wasn't worth pinning the hopes of humankind to? I felt like I did something bad to her now. Hope she doesn't take it personally. But back to Masayuki. There wasn't a lot of hard intel on this guy, so we didn't know much about him. However, he was confirmed to have destroyed Orthrus and freed the elven slaves they were holding. Several elves were among the slaves, and it seems Masayuki is now accompanying them back toward our nation. Sounds like I owe him a word or two of gratitude. But there was a problem. What should we do, Sir Rimuru? If you like, I could dispatch him before he causes any trouble for us. No, better not. Let's try talking with him first. All right. Anyone who professes to slay a demon lord needs to be taught a lesson, in my personal opinion, but yes, as could be surmised from this conversation, there were rumors in the Western nations that Masayuki intended to topple me. So I already had an inhumane-looking smile, just imagining what he'd do with the guy, no doubt, but he still followed my orders. But man, I really didn't want to have to face a hero right in the middle of the Founders' Festival, one of the most important events in the history of Tempest. I was worried the battle-obsessed members of my staff, Shion and Diablo, to say nothing of Suae, would defy orders, run off and do something terribly unwise. Let me take care of Masayuki. Absolutely no touching him, you got it? Yes, sir. Well, at least they knew how to say yes, sir, in unison. But with 3 days to go until the Founders' Festival, I now had a thorny problem at hand. It was like rain on my parade, and it made me feel a lot gloomier about the future. But not long from now. A massive, intense party was about to kick off and throw all my trivial worries to the wind. Afterword. Thanks for your patience. Volume 8 is finally here. I think at least some of you have already read the web series version of this content. It's actually part of the Demon Capital Opens Arc. Why did the title of this volume change? Well, there's a good story behind that. Don't worry. I promise I'll keep it nice and compact this time. I've heard that one before. I don't bother worrying much about the length by this point. That's how I kicked off this volume, and then when the deadline drew closer, we need to talk. Yeah, what is it? Well, it's starting to get a little long, actually. It is, huh? I figured as much. My editor, Mr. I was wholly unmoved, but my turn wasn't over yet. Could we make this a 2-volume story arc? Because I could write 100 more pages, and it'll still end in kind of a half-ass position. How about we shake things up and go with a 2-parter? No. Why'd it come down to this? It was a very heartwarming conversation, one that ended with Mr. his eyes rolling all the way back inside his head. So, yeah, I have some regrets. Not even I'm entirely sure why it turned out like this, but lately I've started to think it's a little impossible to condense this story. Thus, I'm working hard to finish up the Demon Capital Opens arc in Volume 9. I'm trying to make sure this doesn't turn into a trilogy, so I hope you'll come along for the ride. See you in the next volume. Thank you for buying this ebook, published by Yen On. To get news about the latest manga, graphic novels and light novels from Yen Press, along with special offers and exclusive content, sign up for the Yen Press newsletter. Sign up or visit us at Yen Press. Book link.